Hey everybody, welcome back to the channel. This is your host, Chaos Kaiser speaking, coming to you with another video on Troy, a Total War Saga. Now, today's video is going to feature battle tutorials. Yes, we're going to be going through a couple battles in just a little bit, but the reason I'm making this video is because a couple of you had reached out and asked if I could dumb things down, bring it back a little bit when it comes to the actual battles in any Total War game for that matter. Now, mechanics might differ greatly between, depending on which title of Total War you're going through. But let's say this was the first Total War title that you picked up. I'm going to be going through it for my eyes as an amateur, looking at the mechanics, the stats, the tricks, the tips, some of the maybe shortcuts that might help you guys better understand how to engage better on the battlefield, because a very, very big aspect of the Total War games is the actual battles. So as opposed to auto-resolving every time, I'm going to be going through a couple things to think about when you're going on the battlefield, and just understanding more of the mechanics behind troops, the types of troops, what they're used for, and how to actually utilize them more efficiently on the battlefield. But regardless of what you guys are here for, let's dive into the custom battle tab and go through all the mechanics that you might encounter out there during your campaign. So first thing you'll notice is that up here you have a defender and an attacker. Now, based on what you're struggling with, you might need more practice as an attacker and see how the AI reacts to your kind of strategy on the battlefield versus a defender where the AI is the aggressor and you have to be more reactionary to what they're doing in setting up your strategy and how you're going to navigate the battlefield through each battle. You can switch this around, okay? So this, you can actually determine whether you want to force the AI to react or react to whatever the AI does and see how they react to what you do, okay? So keep that in mind. Now, I decided to play as Hector, and I'm fighting against Agamemnon and the Mycenae. Now, I'm going to go through these units and the unit types really quickly. Hopefully, it all makes sense. I don't want to take up too much time on it. But first and foremost, right down here, you have the badges that show what unit and what type of weapon they are engaging with on the battlefield. This number above their head is their value. So when you start a custom battle, for instance, and even in your campaigns, you will see that certain troops require more, not only to recruit, but an upkeep expense as well. So keep that in mind. But in custom battles, it's just, this is how much money you have. This is what you have to spend. Select your army wisely. That's really all they give you. So as opposed to spamming, a lot less expensive troops with worse stats, I decided to go with better troops with better stats. I don't even have a full army here. In order to show you guys a little bit more of the mechanics out there on the battlefield, show a little bit of a longer engagement as opposed to maybe troops that might route a little quicker and so forth. So let's dive into it. First things first, you have spear units. That's what this emblem indicates. Club units, whether they're spiked clubs or regular clubs, whatever, that's what that indicator is. Swords, again, you have spears. And then you also have axes. Now, I'll show you on this side. Chariots, that's what that means. Slingers, archers, and it doesn't even look like he has, he doesn't even have axes, but take your guess, guys. It'll probably be axes, or look like an axe if you see it down here as an icon. So just keep that in mind. But heading back over here, as we go up, you can see the units are obviously getting better. They even look better. So, starting from the bottom here, you have poor attack, low armor. You could read through their statistics. If you click on it, that will hold that unit in place so you could keep their statistics there. And then, for instance, if I'm looking at a militia warband, well, okay, that's clearly a shield and spear. It says spear and shield right there in the description. So I'm going to go to another unit that's a spear and shield and maybe hover over it. These guys. So these guys are spear and shield. So I could see the differences very quickly. They're almost triple as expensive, but I want to see what they do. Okay, so or where the differences lie. So they have a ton more armor. They have a lot more morale. They have a bit of more of a charge bonus, a lot more damage. So you can go through these statistics side by side and see what's worth it to you. If your budget allows for it, obviously you're probably going to want the better troops. So that's how I configured my army out here. But before we actually dive into the compositions and everything, just so that you guys understand, the game describes the units as light, medium, and heavy. But that's only one piece of the puzzle. And what I'm trying to explain here is that only shows how much armor and how fast they move on the battlefield. That's literally what that categorizes as. It doesn't necessarily mean better or worse, okay? But one thing that you need to understand is that the subdivisions to those categories include your frontline engagement troops, okay? Your flanking units. And inside those flanking units, you have two categories. You have specifically flankers that can come in from any direction and continue to engage a bit more than the other type of flanking troops, which are charge troops, or troops that add a lot of, quote, shock value to the battlefield. So those are meant to go into the battle and produce a lot of damage for a short amount of time before having to back out and then cycle through that charge again. And that is exactly what it's called. It's called cycle charging. So if you see a unit that says charger, you're going to want to keep micromanaging those units on the battlefield to cycle in to engage, inflict maximum amount of damage, and then back out, and then repeat the process over and over and over again. Now, it is diminishing returns over time because your unit will get tired and whatnot, and their damage won't be as high. But hopefully by the time that you're in through your 10th cycle, I'm just giving an example, you'll almost be done with the battle, okay? So let's go through some of those types. So up front, I'm going to go through my composition here. I see that these guys have good defense, they're shielded, and their weight class is heavy. They don't have great speed, but I might want to use them to engage frontline on the battlefield so that I have time to get my other troop types into better positions and use them optimally on the battlefield. That's the key word here, is optimally. You want to utilize each troop and each type of troop in an optimal scenario on the battlefield. Not just chuck everyone in there at once. The only reason I say that is because I'm guilty of it. So keep that in mind. It's all coming from experience here. But let's talk about the frontline troops. So these guys, any troop that has great, good, great, excellent, whatever type of defense, as we go up here, it says good defense, excellent defense for champions of Troy. Those are going to be your frontline engagement troops, and they're gonna kind of absorb a lot of the damage while also tying up a lot of the opposing forces on the battlefield. So anytime you see that statistic, know that your majority of your time utilizing this troop is going to be in a frontline type of scenario. They are not going to be flanking or charging as their primary means of combat on the battlefield, okay? So that's what I used them for. I have 3 of them just to get a little flavor on the battlefield. Then we're going to move over to our charging troops, heavy shock spears. So heavy shock spears, you can see it says charger right there in the description. Two-handed spear infantry. Anytime you see a unit that is a two-handed weapon unit, meaning they don't have a shield along with them, you can almost guarantee that they're going to be utilized in a flank/charging type of situation. They're a lot more speedy. They can engage a lot quicker. They inflict a lot of damage in a short amount of time. They don't have a ton of defense and whatnot, but then you can get them out of the battle, okay? They're armored in this case, which helps our defense, so they can engage for a little bit longer, but then I'm going to want to cycle them out before doing another charge with them back into the flank and or rear of the formation of any of our opposing troops, okay? So that is what that charger statistic is telling you. Now, we also have flankers. Now, I'm looking over here at Hector's Chosen, and Hector's Chosen, they have excellent attack. They are immune to flanking. They are shielded, okay? Now, these guys, they are a top-tier troop. These are the best that you can get for Hector for what they are. You can also see their value is also the highest, and I can only recruit 2 of them for a custom battle. But I still fell within the budget, so that's what I decided to use. And these guys, I'm going to use as flankers because they have excellent attack. So if I use them on a flank, they can't be flanked, but they can flank and cause a tremendous amount of damage along with our chargers on the battlefield, while our frontline engagement troops are tying up a majority of the forces on the battlefield. Now, I threw some archers in here as well. You can tell by the icon here, archers, javelins, and slingers, as I mentioned before, just to show what I'm doing with my troops, or with my archers, as they are engaging out there on the battlefield, what I'm doing with them, how I'm utilizing them, and changing either their position, or what they're focused on, or what the primary targets are, so on and so forth. So keep that in mind. But the main thing I want you guys to understand is that, yes, you do have your three types of units that the game displays to you. That is light, medium, and heavy. But again, that only describes their speed and their armor on the battlefield, okay? Those are the two primary things that you're going to want to take away from understanding how the game is categorizing your troops versus the subcategories within each of those weight classes, I'll consider that. And that is whether they are a frontline engagement troop, a charging troop, or a flanking troop. And if we switch over to the AI here, you can see here experts in flanking. So they actually have that designation. They have great armor and whatnot, so they can engage for a long amount of time, and they can engage very, very well from a flanking position on the battlefield. Versus these guys that look like resistant to flanking, excellent armor, heavy weight class. This is probably going to be his frontline, troops and whatnot. He has some shock troops. He has some chariots. He has slingers. He's got a whole mix of everything on the battlefield. So keep that in mind. That's how they're categorized. That's not how the 2 rounds that I'm about to show you guys. That's not the exact army composition that was there. I selected the troops for the first round for the computer. I selected top tier troops that were available in the first round. And then when I switched this, when I went over to Defender and I made the Mycenae attack me, then they changed it. They chose all the troops that they wanted to use on the battlefield. So I didn't have any control over that. And I'll show you guys that in just a second. But just so you guys know, that's a basic overview here of the troops, at least from a melee perspective. The missile infantry, obviously, as they go up, same kind of concept here. I think the big thing is you want to see how much armor-piercing damage they do, what their range is, and how much ammo they have. Okay, majority of the time you're not going to have your missile infantry engaging, in a melee kind of aspect, right? You're going to want to have them utilize all their ammo, and only in an absolute necessary situation have them engage from a melee perspective. So, but as you go up here, you can see these guys just have poor defense, these guys have poor armor piercing damage, low armor, and then finally you get to here, these guys are armored, they have excellent missile range, good morale, and they're a medium weight class kind of missile troop. The rest of these are all light missile troops. So gotta just weigh it. All right, I could have done maybe a few more regiments of slingers as opposed to less units of renowned archers. I just decided to utilize the archers, allocate my budget towards that. So let's hop over to the battlefield. I'm going to explain more of the mechanics on the actual battlefield, but just so you could see how it works right now, this is the balance of power going into the battle. Okay, so that gauge is constantly teetering as you either react, or your troops, their engagements on the battlefield affect this bar, and it is constantly moving. So keep that in mind. But now let's go on over to the battlefield, and I'll just explain the overview before I switch again over to the actual battles themselves. So here is our battlefield. I just wanted to pick one that was kind of simple, not too crazy, not utilizing a huge variety of terrain. It's a pretty open field. You got a couple hills there. But essentially, let's go through these things first. First of all, grouping. How do you group your troops? Well, you can either go one of 2 ways. You can either select them like this and draw a box. So you're just clicking and dragging with your left mouse pointer. And once they are selected, you can hit G on your keyboard. That is a default. That is how you get them into a group. So now any way that I move them in this capacity, you can either make their ranks deeper or thinner. It depends on how you want to have them set up. If you want to have them cover more ground but less density, you could spread them out further, or you can tighten up the formation a little bit so that the arrows that are flying are coming in huge, chunky waves, if you will. So I'll spread them out here for all intents and purposes. Then I'm going to want to group my frontline infantry like this, and my shock spears again like this. And then my Hector's Chosen, maybe I'll put them with Hector here as a fourth group, just as an example, okay? And I bet you guys are wondering, well, how did you just select all of those troops as one? Like, for instance, if I ungroup all of these guys, and all I'm doing is selecting the tab, that's their color, and then hitting G again, and that deselects them in a group. All you have to do is click on the troop that you want, the first troop that you want. And if I want to select this entire army as its own group, hold down Shift and then click to the end of the formation. And that will select all of your troops. You can hit G, and that creates the group for you. Okay? Now, let's say I don't want. Maybe I want Hector, I want a Guard of Troy, I want a Shock Spear, a Hector's Chosen, and an Archer in a group. Well, how did I just select them individually? I held down Control, okay? So I could clear it just by clicking anywhere on the screen. And then if I want to select Hector, you hold down Control, click, 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 release Control, okay? Now I could set them up as their own group, okay? Another thing that I want to express to you guys, now that I have these guys selected, you could see that my formation and how I have them selected is kind of crazy. You know, I've selected one of each group, and when I select them to be in their own formation, they are removed from that group, okay? But let's say I have these guys over here, I have these guys over there, I want these guys up there, I want these guys back here. They're still in their group, right? Now I could click them back, and they can get back into their formation. I can click on the group and just even them all back out again. But let's say I wanted to keep them like this, for whatever reason. You can hit this lock button up here, and that will lock them into this formation so that regardless of where I choose and rotate on the battle or on the battlefield, they will stay as that formation. Okay? Doesn't matter. Wherever you choose and rotate, and all I'm doing is right-clicking and dragging. And so you could change the angle, you can change their, anything except their actual formation. So position, everything is included in that. Now let's unlock it, and you can see they can go right back into a normal formation, okay? So keep that in mind. Now, a couple of you had asked on stream, how did you move the entire army in their formation up on the battlefield, all in one? Well, okay, let's create just two other quick groups here. Group. So I'll go 1, 2, 3. All right. Now you guys asked, how did I move them up and keep their formation? Well, you could do this. Essentially what I did is you could do Control A. That also selects your entire army. So hold down Control and then select A. And then you hold down the Alt key. The Alt key. And while holding that down, left click and drag. Okay? You're left clicking and you're dragging, and your army will stay in that formation apart from your subgroups that I already have set up. So you could keep your subgroups as it is, but this will just move your entire army in the formation that you have set to whatever point you want on the battlefield. I could put them over there. I could put them over there. I could click over here if I want. I just messed up the formation because I right-clicked. But essentially you get it. So I could, again, reassign that formation. And then Control A, and then Alt. Okay? If I do actually move them over there or over here, doesn't matter. You can move them wherever you want. Okay? So that's just a little bit of understanding how the some of the controls will make it a little bit easier for you guys on the battlefield as opposed to clicking and hopefully, scrambling to get them back into the formation that you want. Okay? Another thing that I kind of just want to briefly go over is your angle. So obviously when we started and we looked on the battle, we were facing like this, right? It's not very easy to see your troops unless you're far away and see how they're exactly lined up. So you can use WASD to actually navigate the battlefield, right? Okay, so you could actually see 360 if you want. and you could and kind of just gauge what you want to do. Where the angle comes into play, the C and the V keys, okay? C will angle your pitch down, so you can see more on top of your troops, versus V, which will angle your camera up, including if you want to see the weather. So just remember, C and V is how you navigate with them. So in case you want to see a top-down view, just to say, okay, my army is not in a perfectly straight line. They might not be perfectly straight, but that looks better. Okay, so maybe I'll keep them like that. And then I could go back and see, more of the engagement and where his troops line up after I hit start battle. Okay. Then another one to keep in mind, apart from C and V, is the Z and the X key. Okay. So Z and X actually affect your altitude on the battlefield. So if you want to get real close and personal, look right up at the archers, their faces, whatever. Go down the line, check out all your troops, whatever. X and Z are what change your altitude. Okay, keep those in mind as well. Now, let's say I've had enough of the overlay, right? I don't want to see anything on the battlefield. I just want to watch the fight unfold itself. You can hit K, and everything disappears, so you get more of a panoramic. You can still select your troops if you want, but they will not be highlighted. You will not see which troop you actually selected because there are no icons or anything on them. So this pretty much just gives you more of a panoramic and cinematic point of view on the battlefield in case you just want to see more of the engagement unfold as opposed to micromanaging and looking at all your troops and whatnot as they progress their way through the battle. Okay, you hit K again to bring that overlay back. All right, so just keep that in mind. But that's a little bit of a basic overview on how to utilize some of the commands, shortcuts, hotkeys, whatnot. And anytime I hit the number pads here, that'll also select the groups. So if I go 1 2 3 1 2 3 1 2 3 2 1, whatever you want to do. Make sure if you do utilize it that you have your num lock if you're using that side keypad and whatnot. But regardless, I'm using WASD, so I just use the numbers up top. That's just how I tend to work on the battlefield. Another thing that I wanted to go over with you guys before we actually get into the battles are these panels. These panels on the side. So here is our balance of power. This will show our rage meter. So as this fills up, you will see on a little icon on your hero down here that will fill up as they have more rage, and then you can utilize their special abilities and whatnot. Down here, you have the pause, slow motion, play, forward, and fast forward screen or icons, where you can kind of determine the pace of the battle. So maybe you're working on micromanaging, you're working on trying to understand the troops better, and you don't necessarily you want to practice essentially. Well, you could put it in slow-mo and watch every single individual engagement. Yes, the battle will progress that much slower, but at least you'll be able to, kind of maneuver around the battlefields a little bit easier as you see things happening based off your engagements, okay? And then, obviously, towards the end of battles and whatnot, you can hit fast forward just to get through it and get to the end screen quicker. You have your panel down here for your hero and different camera angles that you can get on them once you start engaging in the battle, along with their specialties and their abilities. This caters to the skill tree. So as your heroes skill up and you select certain things on the skill tree, which can be an entirely separate video, this is going to determine which ones you can use, what the effects are in battle, and how to use them, okay, what they're beneficial for. Down here, last thing I'm going to go over is just what your individual units are doing. So if I select, let me get these back into all groups again. I can group them and then ungroup them. So let me get into my archers and then my shock spears and then Hector's Chosen and Guards of Troy along with Hector. Separate group there. So your melee or your missile troops, you could choose the speed at which they are navigating through the battlefield. You can either walk or run, and this will be available once you start the battle. You could toggle them to melee mode. So let's say they're out of, or they're not out of ammo. They will default to missile mode, if you will. But if you want them to engage, let's say you're running out of troops and you're desperate or something, you could hit this and they will automatically go into melee mode and fight manually as opposed to staying back and continuing to shoot arrows. So it's up to you if or how you want to use that, but just so you guys know it's there. Halt makes them stop whatever they're doing, whether that's shooting, whether that's walking, whether that's running, it does not matter. Halt will stop whatever action they are currently engaged in. Group. So groups the units in a control group, allowing orders to be issued to all of them. So you could select them like this and then select the group just like that. But that's very inefficient and a lot slower to do. So again, you can just utilize the G key to do that. All of these have hotkeys. So you can kind of mix and match if you want. F, for instance, toggles melee mode for these guys when they're selected. But, so you could go like 1 and then F, and that's toggled off their melee mode. Just so you guys know that those are available to you. Skirmish mode. That means that they will run away if any troops come within a certain range of them. So I could toggle that on or off. If I have it on, that means they will run away if other troops get close. If I have it off, they will stand their ground and stay where they are in order to further engage with the units on the battlefield. Guard mode means that they will hold their position and not pursue disengaged targets. So if I have that selected, they are not going to go anywhere. They're going to stay in their position and find a new target if the other unit, for instance, is routing or they're disengaged, or they're going away on the battlefield, whatever the case, okay? So just keep that in mind. If you want them to continue engaging, they will run into your formations and stuff like that. They will continue to pursue the unit that you have assigned them to attack if guard mode is not selected, okay? Just remember that. Last but not least, you could set the formation. That's more of a, it's up to you guys whether you want them to have a missile front or, melee front. So keep that in mind. It's entirely up to you how you want to use them. You have less of a selection here between your actual melee troops on the battlefield. So when you're talking about spears versus swords, they're very similar. Okay, so just keep that in mind. For instance, I mean, they do have a slight variation with some of them. For instance, here, they can switch their attack mode, so they have the other weapon, which you saw on the screen before. They can toggle between a special weapon. But for majority of the troops that you're going to be using infantry-wise, it's going to look like this. You're always going to have them in melee mode. You can halt them, group them, guard mode, and then set their formation. Very, very simple kind of stuff. If I select Hector, oh, there we go. Okay, perfect. So when your rage meter fills up, this will fill up orange. You can select this and you can see what actually happens. That little, in the top right side of that panel, you can see it's like an arrow and it says 1. That means you can only use this ability once. So definitely make it count once you're able to utilize that rage on the battlefield, if you wind up filling up the rage meter. But as for everything else, these are all just your hero's abilities that they can actually use on the battlefield. This is your rage meter that will fill up, that will allow you to utilize these more efficiently. And we can go into another video on that. But essentially, the more this is up, the more you can utilize that meter in spending some of your hero's ability and rage points. So you can see right there, unit does not have enough rage. So I need to wait for this to fill up before I can even utilize this ability on the battlefield. So that's just a little bit of an overview for you. If you want to toggle the map a little bit differently and see it from a different perspective, you can select this down here, the toggle tactical map here, and kind of just figure where you kind of want to line up your troops and where you hope to set your engagements. Okay, so just keep that in mind. Even as you scroll in, it will not, align itself with how the view was before until you unselect or deselect that toggle tactical map. Now I can keep hitting that by hitting my scroll wheel, and my scroll wheel will do the same thing. So I can, if I keep hitting it, you can see that bar filling up at the top of the screen when I do this. Once that fills up, it will see that I want to go into this mode instead. And then I can just scroll out, and again, I'm back in the toggling for the tactical map. Same if I'm scrolling in, it'll go back to the normal map mode, okay? That's just about it. I mean, everything else is either toggling or your cameras or other information up here. Not as important. I think it's about that time we head over to the battlefield, though. You guys can see the engagements. I can walk you through everything. Again, I'm no expert. I'm an amateur on the actual battles, but I'm going to do my absolute best to utilize the troops that I have in the positions that they're meant for, and the roles that they're meant to utilize on the battlefield, and hopefully get us a couple victories. One as an attacker, one as a defender. All right, let's head on over to the real battle, and I'll see how this all goes down. Alrighty, guys, here we go. First battle, we're going to be serving as the attackers in this situation. And if you look at the top of the screen there, you can see the balance of power is slightly against us. So we are going to have some ground to make up here in order to be triumphant during this battle. So first and foremost, let's go through the groups that I've already set up. So I fast forwarded a little bit here to get everything set up for you guys. I have my spearmen, and then behind them, I have my archers. Obviously, the spearmen are going to serve as the front line for the archers to continue raining down fire while the spearmen have everyone engaged or tied up. I have my shock troops on the right, and I also have my swordsmen who are flankers on the left. So I have them sectioned out a little bit just so you guys can kind of see them in perspective of how, at least how I'm lining them up on the battlefield. And Hector. I have Hector also aiming towards the front, and I'm probably going to keep him within the spear troops so that he can engage and help kind of move the needle on the front line. But let's dive right into this battle here. I think we're just about ready. And first things first, I'm going to select my spearmen because they're going to be the ones that I move up first. Now, I don't know how his formation is until I start the battle. So now that I started the battle, I can see exactly how he has everything set up. He has all of his ranged units in the middle, and now I know that I'm the attacker. I have to make the first move. So I'm going to start moving up my frontline troops along with Hector and my ranged troops, and then I'm going to send my flankers and my shockers to the outside, to the perimeters, to kind of hide in the trees and whatnot, so that his troops cannot actually see them before it hopefully is too late. Now, I'm going to try and time this right, but I don't know if I will. I'm just going to hope here, but in the meantime, while they're moving across the battlefield, one thing that I want to show you guys is if you hold down the space bar, you can see these little spheres that are on the battlefield, and that indicates the range of your ranged troops. So you can actually see how far your archers will shoot. If your enemies are within that range, then they can actually engage. If not, then obviously you need to move up closer. But you can also see your opponent's range. So obviously, as I'm hovering over them, you can see that sphere as well. And as a result of that, you kind of have to maneuver yourself accordingly. Now, I do have my swords units selected right now. They're sitting in the trees, and I'm just seeing if me moving forward has any indication on how Agamemnon sets up his troops, or if he moves them at all. But I'm going to see, just in particular, if I can get my troops within range of his troops to force them to engage with my spears up front in order to give my spears, my flanking spears, or my shock troops and my flanking units the opportunity to engage on the backside of his formations in order to cause that morale burst, is what I would like to call it. So as I can see, they are moving, and I'm just going to keep kind of moving my troops around a little bit and see if he reacts at all to it. Doesn't look like he's taking any bait. I do believe I'm going to have to engage directly with them, but as you can see, I'm just going through what happens again if I lock my troops versus keeping them unlocked and moving them, and how those formations will again translate on the battlefield if you keep them locked versus unlocked. Now, I'm going to keep all these guys in one group because I want to lock them in the position that they're in, and I don't want them to disengage either. So I'm going to move them all up together with Hector now a part of the group. And the reason being for this is just because I want to keep everything kind of synced up on the battlefield. So again, you're seeing all of these units divided, subdivided. I'm switching how I'm mixing up exactly what kind of formations I want them in, and I'm responding to how Agamemnon is setting himself up. He has some troops on the flank. He has his ranged troops still in the middle, and then he has some of his spears on the side. So I'm going to have to kind of mix up my formations in order to make sure that I'm getting into the most optimal positions for my troops on the battlefield. Now, I'm going to engage with his ranged troops, and in the meantime, as he engages, I'm hopefully going to mean that he takes the bait and his frontline troops and his other troops kind of descend in upon my frontline spear troops. So he is firing on these guys. These guys have fantastic defense on the if they're facing their opponents, and as you can see, my troops are engaging and his troops are responding, so they're starting to move in. His archers are taking an astronomical amount of damage up front here, so I'm hopefully going to get my spears engaged. I'm going to have to move rather quickly here. I'm not sure if I might be too late as it is, but I'm going to try and engage my troops that are on the flanks as quickly as I possibly can. So we're taking down those archers right now, and that archer unit is already fleeing the battlefield, so that is fantastic. We don't have to worry about them putting down any more fire, at least for right now. They're not broken, but they are routing. So I'm going to hopefully get my archers to engage. I'm sending in my spears. I'm also sending in my swordsmen. I'm a little bit late here. You can see he has a couple spear units that are going to be engaging with my archers. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to toggle on skirmish mode, and hopefully that again, as I explained to you guys earlier, that means that they will back up if any enemies are within a particular distance of them on the battlefield. So he's going to have to choose if he's going to pursue my archers or he's going to come back to the main battlefield and engage with my front line or my shock troops. I do have my spears and swordsmen engaging on the flanks right now, and here come my 3 shock units on the right flank here, and they're going to be engaging again to hopefully break his troops right at the front line. Just get that morale bar down. And again, you could see I had one of them engage with the archers, so they're starting to retreat. I have one of my swordsmen engaging with 2 spear units while my archers shoot them in the back. So again, I'm just kind of maneuvering around what he's doing with his units on the battlefield. And right there, my shock troops are able to engage with his archers, which is a good thing. So that'll tie them up from firing anywhere. And my archers are able to actually volley over and hit some of his sword units so that my units can continue to engage, get that morale bust, and I'm just going to cycle out some of these other spear troops that you can see that are pulling out a little bit further before I cycle charge them back in and hopefully break their morale. Now, again, I'm focusing very heavily on where my archers are firing because I want them to engage with his range units and get them off the battlefield so we don't have anything to worry about there. But now I'm going to send in the spears again. I was probably a little bit late on this, but again, it's all about like kind of the tactics that are behind it because I saw that my spears needed help. So I was trying to engage my archers a little bit more. My swords are following these guys so that they don't engage with my archers anymore. But here come the cavalry. They're starting to back into them. They're starting to engage more with them on the front line, both surrounding them in a way. And there goes another one of his archer units, and those guys are broken. They are not going to be able to come back to the battlefield. And again, I'm just going to continue to have these guys engage with the archers. We need the ranged units off the battlefield. But as you can see, look up towards the top. The balance of power is starting to shift in our favor. So we're going to keep our eye on that. But in the same time, we're also going to really take advantage of whoever we can get our shots down on. Now, I switched where my archers were just firing. I got a couple volleys in there, but now that I have one of my shock troops engaged, they're not going to be able to fire, so I'm going to have them focus on this other unit that's right in front of my swordsman, and they're routing, so they're leaving the battlefield. They're not going to be able to come back, and we look like we might be getting close to breaking them entirely. I'm looking at their morale gauges. I'm looking at where Agamemnon is on the battlefield, and I'm sorry if I'm speaking fast, but I want to do this real time so you guys know where my thought process is. And I'm just looking and surveying everything. I'm seeing who needs help. We have another spear unit that just is broken now on the top of your screen there, which frees up 2 more units, and we have our leftover spear units who can engage, another spear unit that can engage. Those archers are broken. We're getting behind Agamemnon's main core of the remaining troops that he has that are on the battlefield here, so hopefully we'll be able to engage with them enough to just completely shatter them and take over. So again, I'm having my archers, they're just kind of picking what targets are left. I didn't have them engage with anything. They're just going for some of the spear units that are remaining. And there it is. That looks like what might be it. You can see that balance of power bar moving heavily in our favor now. And this might be the straw that breaks the camel's back. And there you go. Victory just like that. So I know it could have probably been a little bit cleaner. But at least hopefully you guys understand where my head was in engaging his troops, forcing them in, baiting them in, if you will, and then having the troops on the flanks, for instance, my swords and my spears, utilize what they're good at, and that's to engage after the primary engagement has already started. So wasn't that clean of a victory, but we still got it. We didn't lose any units on the battlefield. Hector is very badly wounded at this point, but he suffered 630 losses. We suffered only 275. So for mechanics, I hope you guys can see where I was coming from. I know I get excited about these battles when I'm commentating over them, but I hope you can at least understand where I was coming from with this. And we're going to head back into the custom screen here and switch things over, if you will. So now I'm going to be serving as the defenders, and he's going to be serving as the attackers. And we'll head right into the battle here, but just one last final thought there on the previous battle. It might have sounded like I was saying a lot, but in order to win the battle, you really have to make sure that you take everything into consideration at all times. So you do have to multitask during these battles in order to make sure that you're triumphant and that you're not neglecting any troops who might be better suited or better used elsewhere. But now let's get into this one. Spears up front, archers in the back, similar setup as it was last time. So I'm going to have them like this, but this time I'm going to utilize the battlefield where we have this hill to our advantage. And knowing that we are the defenders this time, he's going to have to make the first move. So now, knowing that I'm a defender and that he's engaging, I can set up shop wherever I feel is more tactically advantageous for me. So knowing that we have this hill that we can utilize to our advantage in firing down on his troops, which will lose stamina running up the hills, we can better situate our troops just to react to what he's doing as opposed to being the first one to initiate an engagement. So I'm going to put, as you saw, my spears in the trees. They are hidden right now. Agamemnon and none of his troops can see them. I also have the swords over on the side so you can see them. I don't have everyone grouped up just yet because I might not even group them up. I might just react according to what he does. But again, because I'm the defender, when I switched it over, Agamemnon decided which troops and which generals he has in his army. I did not select this, and we still have the balance of power against us. But this time we're going to be reacting to some chariots, so you guys will be able to see how we react to some quote-unquote cavalry in this installment here. He also has some swordsmen, some two-handed swordsmen, which are very good attackers as well. So I'm kind of curious how this one plans out. We're going to try and get in the best situation up front so that we can continue our engagement and utilize the bonuses that our troops have to offer. Again, except now we are reacting instead of initiating. And look, I'm just keeping my eye on those chariots because if they engage, we have to be there. That is the primary threat. We got to get the chariots down. I know that the patch came out and whatnot. It's still seemingly a bit broken, but I don't want his troops to see my shock spears yet. So I'm going to bury them a little deeper in the forest right now because he's got a long line of troops, and the AI tends to span their troops out for a wide amount of engagement as opposed to stacking them all up in the middle. And they do react eventually, but you can see my archers are already reacting to his general coming up on the battlefield. Just going to get a couple shots down, but I'm going to focus most of my attention once the chariots are in range. I'm also going to start to get my spears involved a little bit and moving forward. Now, my spears up front are going to be able to handle his general. But in the meantime, I'm just going to keep an eye on where my archers are looking. So I know that I have guys on the side. And now they're pointing in. That is the perfect time for us to engage. But I'm going to switch over to my spears so that we can start engaging on the shock side of things and just spiking that morale burst, if you will, by having them engage. They're really starting to pour in right now. So I'm going to have to move quickly here. I'm going to engage my flankers. I have my archers firing in on the chariots, and the chariots might get through here. One line is not too much. Yeah, they're going to get into the backfield here, so we're going to have our hands full a little bit. Now, they usually don't go past 2 lines. I'm still going to have my archers engaging with the chariots, but we were spotted. His general ran away, and our shock troops, our shock spears have been spotted, so we're going to have to react to that. his archers are actually going through my formation. They aren't even just stopping and turning around. They're actually going through, which might give us the opportunity to just gun them down while we have the opportunity to do so. We did get some damage on them. It looks like they're turning around, and yeah, they're really chewing through our archers here, but they are very heavily damaged as well. You can see that health bar and the morale bar taking some serious hits right now. We're going to have to get these guys off the battlefield almost immediately before we can turn our attention to engaging with anything else, and it looks like they're on the edge of just leaving. I don't know if they're going to leave soon enough, but now we have our shock spears engaged. They are breaking a little bit of the morale of his troops that are up front. We do have them surrounded, and there go the chariots. The chariots are going to be retreating from the battlefield. I don't know if they're going to come back. Hopefully not, but I'm just going to keep engaging with the troops that I know I can. I'm going to cycle charge my spears. They've been engaging for about 10 seconds or so, so that bonus is going to wear off. I want my archers to stand back. I want them to engage with his slingers, get their ranged troops off the battlefield, engage my shock spears, 1 unit on the back of his swordsmen, 1 unit on his archers so that they can stop engaging and shooting my troops on the front line. And we do have a heavy shock spear engaging with another one of his slingers. Our archers are firing over the formations now because we kind of have him surrounded. And as you can see, that balance of power bar is slightly in our favor now. So we do have the tactical advantage here, and we do kind of have them a little bit on their heels. My archers are firing in, making these guys regret their decision. And there goes the archer unit. So they're going to have a tough time coming back to the battlefield and engaging. They are broken, actually, now. So I'm going to have to keep my eye on where my archers are going and how close I want them to engage. I want them to stay behind the line, but I also want them to engage with the slingers. And that's exactly what they're doing. They're putting some heavy damage into those slingers right now. But I'm getting my shock spears again involved for another cycle charge. They're going to go into the back of those swords. And it looks like the two-handed axemen. My spears are doing a fantastic job up front. We're going to lose one of them. It looks like they're going to maybe retreat. They have a little bit of... Nope, they're breaking. But I still have Hector and 2 more units up front. And we have everyone else engaging as well. And we're just cycle charging into them and breaking that morale very, very steadily. So my spears are holding off that. Oh, there it goes. There goes the enemy hero. He goes down to our spear unit. I believe he was in a chariot, so he got off the chariot and died. But here comes the mass rout. And look at the balance of power just like that. As soon as that hero died, everyone lost their morale. Everyone lost their faith in the battle. And even though they do have a decent amount of troops left, you could see how that chain effect comes into play. After you kill a certain number of units, you can cycle or trigger the mass rout. Or if you kill the commander and then you start to kill them, they lose faith and they lose heart as well. And the reason why I'm not ending the battle here is because in some situations, you might want to actually chase down your opponents. Yes, we won the battle. There's no way that they are going to be able to come back from this. It's impossible. But what you can do is chase them down, because if they retreat and the AI puts another general in charge of these guys, they will still engage. They will come back. They will still have these units available. So we want to get rid of as many units as possible to avoid that. We want to kind of chase them down, really thin out the ranks so that the AI essentially will have to start another army from scratch. They're not rebuilding and all they have to do is replace the general, and they still have half the health and capacity of the units that they previously had before this engagement, and then they can, you know, kind of engage with us again on the map even sooner. So we're going to chase them down so that they really don't have a chance to rebuild that army or anything. I think that's, I really just wanted to show you that, guys. This, again, it's a custom battle, so a win is a win. But just remember that during your campaigns. You know, you got to keep that in consideration when you're out there on the battlefield, whether or not you want to chase them down or not. If you are an attacker in a siege battle, now hear this out. If you're an attacker in a siege battle, any victory will wipe out all of the troops. Attacker in a siege battle. So remember that. And same if you're the defender and you get attacked and you lose everything. But look at these stats here. We only lost 235 troops. He lost 675 troops. So very similar, just two different scenarios. One where we were the attacker, one where we were the defender. They made their units for the second battle as the attackers, whereas I selected their units as when they were the defenders. So it kind of added that variable of randomness there, and I hope you guys can appreciate that. But that's really the gist of the battles here, and I hope you guys can appreciate where I was coming from with this video. I hope it was informative. I know I spoke very fast, but I wanted to do it real time because that's how you guys are going to have to play the game out there on the battlefield. You're going to have to understand what your units are doing, understand what their units are doing, see which ones are engaging, which ones aren't, how to kind of maneuver them around in order to be more efficient on the battlefield and not just engage to engage so that everyone's tied up and kind of just wait and see the results. I'm a culprit of that. I used to do that. So I just wanted to hopefully help you guys in this kind of scenario here, where whether you're an attacker, whether you're a defender, you see two different scenarios here and how you can kind of maneuver yourself around the battlefield with either tactics, unit selection for your armies so that they're multifaceted and they're not just heavy infantry or heavy cavalry or heavy range or anything like that. There actually is some thought that goes into making sure that your composition is as optimal and efficient as possible. And then it's just a matter of working on and perfecting the tactics behind it in order to make sure that you're better performing on the battlefield. But that's going to do it for this video. I hope you guys enjoyed. If you did, make sure you hit that like button, hit the subscribe button, check out all the links in the description. Feel free to leave all your comments, questions, concerns, suggestions below. I really appreciate all the support. You guys are the best. And I know a lot of people had wanted this video, so I know it's a little later now, but if you're still struggling, hopefully this was a little bit more informative for you in breaking things down. And thank you guys again. Let me know how your progress is going in all your campaigns, and I look forward to seeing you all on the next one. Take care, guys.